Hello and welcome to Esther's Gardening Adventures. I'm Esther, and today I'm going to share with you my tips for transplanting your seedlings into your garden, specifically how to reduce the stress that might happen to your transplants. One way to just give your plants the best chance at survival is to kind of know whether it is something that prefers to be grown in cool weather and can handle a frost versus something that prefers the heat and can't handle a frost. For example, peppers, eggplants, tomatoes, cucumbers, those all cannot handle a frost, as well as many of your summer variety flowers and herbs like basil. For timing, when you go to transplant seedlings that are not frost hardy, try to look up what your average last frost date is for your zip code and then try to base it around that. I usually go a little bit after the average last frost date. So what I recommend is actually going and finding a community group in your area that gardens, either on Facebook. There's a lot of county or even city gardening groups, and ask the gardeners. Say, when do you normally transplant your summer plants, your frost sensitive plants? And they'll let you know. And then the second thing is, if you want your plants to do their best after they're transplanted, you need to know when they're ready to be transplanted, beyond just the timing. So I'm going to show you, let's see. Here's a good example. You can see these are what's called seed leaves, and there's a formal name for them. I'll put them up in the corner here, like coilydids or something. Anyway, I'll put the word up here that it actually means. But these are the leaves that emerge with the seed when it first sprouts. They're called seed leaves. And then after the plant gets going, it'll put out what's called true leaves. And these are the leaves that look like the plant will look for the rest of everything. And so when you go to transplant a plant, ideally you're going to want to wait until you have at least one or two, preferably at least two sets of true leaves. And then in addition to that, you want to make sure that it's hardy or ready to be transplanted. So if you've grown your seedling indoor under grow lights, you're going to have to harden off your plants. What that means is the plants are not used to, the leaves are not used to the harsh sunlight, and it'll cause them to get crispy. So you're going to need to look up how to harden off your seedlings, but you'll need to basically get them used to being outside in the sun. If you're growing your seedlings using something called winter sowing, which is basically growing your seedlings outdoors in things like milk jugs over the winter, then your seedlings are already ready to handle the sunlight, but you're going to need to open your jug a day or two beforehand. So when I open my seedling, when I open my container, I'll open it the night before or the morning before I'm going to transplant. I'll leave the tape off, but I'll just kind of set it back like this and let it sit like this where the air can get through. Then the next day, I'll take the lid off, leave it in the sun, and usually they'll be fine. Sometimes you have to give it an extra day before you leave the lid off, but just kind of pay attention to the first hour after you take the lid off. If they're really wilty and shriveling up, then put the lid back on and give them another day. Basically though, for most winter sown plants, they're ready to transplant second day, the day after you open them up. So these I opened up this morning. These are petite marigolds, and I'm going to transplant them tomorrow. So that's knowing the timing, making sure that the plants are ready to be transplanted. That'll increase the chance of success. The third thing is you're going to want to prepare your soil. You want to have the ground ready to go. You want to have added any amendments that you're going to add, any compost, any worm castings, anything that you plan to put in there. You want to have that as close to ready to go as possible. All right, so here we have a space where I've already added some leaf compost. I've worked the ground to get rid of most of the weeds. I see a couple coming up now. And I have some peppers I need to transplant. So this is a poblano pepper. This is kind of just on the cusp of being ready to transplant. So we've got our seed leaves, we've got the first true leaf, and then you can kind of see the second true leaf coming out here. This is sort of on the edge of what I want to transplant, but I want to get these in the ground. This is a lilac bell pepper, and then of course these guys have two sets of true leaves, just barely though. If you notice, these are all really dry. So one thing to do before transplanting is to water the seedlings themselves. This will help them have less shock when you transplant them. The roots will be nice and moist. They'll be happy. And if your plant is super stressed, don't transplant it till you get it out of its stress state, because it's going to be going through enough to let the plant be happy and calm and comfortable before you transplant, because an unhappy plant is going to be a drama queen when you transplant it. All right, so we've got the ground prepared. Now notice there's no real sunlight. I've got the trees. This is a shady part of the day. Around 4 o'clock in my first community garden plot, it gets shady, and it's the perfect time to transplant. But if you don't have the opportunity to have a shady area time, or you need to transplant in full sun, then just find some way to shade the plant roots a little bit when you take them out and get them straight into the soil. Now we know we have 1, 2, 3, 4 plants, so I'm going to make 4 holes. Let's see. Now the nice thing about peppers is you can transplant them a little closer than the instructions recommend, because they actually like to hold hands. You don't want to do so close that they will be fighting each other for nutrients, but they actually do better when they provide a little ground cover to each other. Now you see this nice, beautiful clay. I like to, when I'm making my holes in the ground, I like to pull up a little bit of clay and mix it in with the potting mix, because clay will retain moisture better than anything else, and you don't want it in big chunks, but if you have it mixed in, it'll help the ground stay moist and help that plant do well. Okay, so I go a little bit deeper than the plant might need and get some nice clay mixed in there. I try to mix it in nice, because otherwise it'll just clump back up. Okay, let's get some, maybe a little bit more clay. I think I'll plant the Greek oregano over here, because I don't know if you can see it, but I have a bunch of dill growing here already. So maybe I'll just plant the oregano here. So I get a handful of some plant slow release fertilizer over there. And then I'm going to put a little water in the hole first. Let's see it. Spring or not. And then you water it once more. Now, if the ground does something like this, you can wall it up so that the moisture doesn't come out. You can also see how dry that is. I like to do a little bit of massaging into the ground, and I'll add a little bit more water, and I'll try to mix in this super dry soil, because if the soil right around the plant is super dry, it will take moisture from away from where the plant is, and you don't want the soil competing for water with the plant. So you want to try to make sure the whole area around it has a nice good amount of water. And if you can water the whole bed afterwards, do that. Make sure the whole area has water, but especially here. See how I like to put patty cake on it? If you can pat it and you get a little bit of coming back on it, that's perfect. Next up, my lilac bell pepper. This helps make sure, by putting water in the bottom, this helps make sure that the root ball for the plant has plenty of water. So again, no escapees. Let's get that oregano. I grew this from seed, indoors under grow lights. And it's been out and ready to be transplanted, probably for 2 weeks now. I'm going to face it that way so it can grow out the side. Looks like there's a lot of other little ones growing here, but I'm not going to separate them out. They'll be fine. I don't need a whole lot of oregano. Oh, it looks like we're getting low on water. I'm going to go refill it, come back, but not before I put the label in. And when I have like two types of things, I'll just put the label in between the two of them to indicate, you know, that they go together. I don't know if you can see this thing floating over here. This is called a mosquito dunk. It takes about a month to break up, and it'll keep, you can have open water without worrying about the mosquitoes being able to breed in it. It really helps. It's cut down on the amount of mosquitoes around here a lot. And when it comes to transplanting seedlings in milk jugs, when you've got multiple seedlings near each other, this is some purple milkweed I grew using the winter sowing process. They like daytime sun, but afternoon and evening shade. And this is an area right near where I get my hose to fill up my water bucket, and it's also a shaded spot in the afternoon, so it's kind of perfect for these plants. Whether it's a winter sown jug or a grown indoor seedling, or even just a plant you buy from the store, when you take it out of the container, you want to kind of support the base of the plants, not push down on them, and then tip over and let it kind of just fall out into your hands, kind of like that, right? With winter sowing, the first thing I do is I kind of find the outlier plants, and sometimes the soil will break up in a way you can kind of see, but here we have this one. I'm gonna kind of just work the soil, and you're gonna lose a little bit of the roots for it, but you try. See, I'm seeing here most of its roots go this way, so it's kind of fighting with this one for its roots. So maybe I think what I'm gonna do is break off. See this beautiful root composition here. Now if you can break up the soil underneath the roots a little bit, that'll also help them separate a little better. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna set that aside for now. And back to these three. This is the one. Look at that beautiful root structure. This is the one. Well, maybe I'll take these two apart. You just kind of jostle them back and forth. Like I said, you're gonna lose some of the roots, but the extent you can reduce that for any plant, it's better. Obviously, don't kill yourself trying to do it. I have a bug crawling on my leg, okay. But in this case, the roots are nice and white, so they're kind of easy to see. They're helping me out here. Look at that. I don't think I lost many roots at all for this one. Okay. And then here. There we go. Okay. So we got these three. And if I can, I will work a little bit of the actual container soil into the holes that I put these plants as well. And because the roots are so developed, one thing you can do sometimes, or that I do, is I'll actually pour over the roots as a way to kind of help make sure there's no gaps in there. And we had a really beautiful rain 2 days ago, so the ground is nice and moist already, which is just really perfect for transplanting conditions, really. All right, now for aftercare. The first 3 days or so after you've transplanted a seedling is when they're really the most vulnerable to being impacted by the weather and stuff. If you're in an area that doesn't get much rain or the ground is really dry, you're gonna wanna check on those seedlings, not just leave them alone. And you're probably gonna wanna water them daily, or if they're starting to look stressed, add water. The reason plants act like drama queens is because you didn't do all the other things I mentioned, and or you didn't water them well enough, or the water's dissipated and their roots are not getting a chance to get established. Oh, one other quick tip is, if you can, put in the structures you're going to use for the plants shortly after transplanting them, if not on the same day. It'll make a huge difference. It'll reduce the amount of impact you'll have on the roots, and it'll just it looks nice to have stakes and other things around your plants. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned as I have so much more to show you, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.